The detention facility on Kronos 9 wasn't like Earth prisons. It floated in dead space, far from any inhabited world, surrounded by weapons platforms that could crack a planet in half. This place held things that terrified the entire galaxy. Warlords who'd burn civilizations. Criminals with technology that broke the laws of physics. Creatures that shouldn't exist. But everyone knew the real nightmare lived in Section Omega. Commander Valen had worked at Kronos 9 for 32 years. He'd seen prisoners who could read minds, warriors who'd killed thousands, and things from dimensions humans couldn't even pronounce. None of them scared him anymore. He'd learned to treat danger like paperwork, catalog it, contain it, move on. Cell 001 was different. The commander stood in his office, holding a data tablet that felt heavier than it should. The Emperor's seal glowed red at the top. Direct orders from the throne world didn't come often, and when they did, people usually died. The containment fields are failing, the message read. Nutritional suppression is at 18%. Entity must be fed within 72 hours or containment breach is inevitable. Assign personnel immediately. Valen's forehands trembled slightly. He set the tablet down and stared out the reinforced window at the facility's endless corridors. Somewhere below, buried under a mile of quantum-locked steel and reality-stabilizing technology, S.H. Kareth the Devourer was getting hungry. He'd read the files 1,000 times. 3,821 years ago, an Imperial exploration fleet had pushed into the void between the space that existed in the cracks of normal reality. They'd encountered something there. A creature. Massive, dark, with fur that absorbed light and eyes that burned like dying stars. It looked like what some species called a feline, but appearances meant nothing. S.H. Kareth had torn through 17 star systems trying to escape back to its home dimension. Billions died. Entire planets were reduced to quantum foam. The Empire threw everything at it: battle fleets, reality anchors, dimensional bombs. Nothing worked. Finally, they'd managed to trap it using technology they barely understood, dragging it into baseline reality and sealing it in Cell 001. For nearly 4 millennia, the creature had sat in that cell, sustained by fields that suppressed its need for physical sustenance. Nobody went near it. The monitoring equipment showed it just sitting there, occasionally moving, its presence warping reality around it like heat waves over summer asphalt. Until 3 weeks ago when the first field generator had failed. Valen had reported it immediately. Engineers said they'd fix it. But the technology was ancient, built by species that no longer existed. 2 more generators failed. Then 5. Now the creature needed actual food or it would wake up fully. And when it woke up, Cell 001 wouldn't hold it. The commander activated his communication panel. "Send in Lieutenant Harsk," he said. The Graxian officer arrived within minutes, his gray skin pale with stress. He already knew what this was about. "Commander, Cell 001 needs a feeder," Valen said simply. Harsk's 3 eyes widened. "Sir, regulations state that I cannot order my personnel to." "I'm not ordering. I'm asking for volunteers." The silence stretched between them like a physical thing. "Sir, no one will volunteer for that." Valen knew he was right. Over the next 48 hours he called in every department head. Security, maintenance, medical, research. He offered promotions, bonus credits, early retirement. He even went down to the prisoner blocks, offering full pardons to anyone willing to approach Cell 001. 3 condemned prisoners actually laughed at him. "I'll take the execution," one said. "At least that'll be quick." Time was running out. The facility's AI projected 61 hours until S.H. Kareth fully awakened. Once that happened, the entity would start testing the barriers. The barriers would fail. Then everyone on Kronos 9 would die, and the creature would tear back into normal space. Valen sat in his office at hour 58, staring at an empty volunteer list. His career was over. The facility was doomed. He'd have to order an evacuation and hope the Emperor's fleet could destroy S.H. Kareth before it reached inhabited space. That's when his door chimed. "Enter," Valen said, not bothering to look up. "Hey, Commander. Sorry to bother you. I'm Jake Martinez, one of the new maintenance guys from Earth." Valen's head snapped up. A human stood in his doorway, young, maybe 25 standard years, wearing a maintenance uniform that looked 2 sizes too big. Humans. The newest species to join the Empire, barely 10 years in, still learning how the galaxy worked. Most aliens found them strange, soft-bodied, short-lived, absurdly emotional. "How can I help you?" Valen asked tiredly. "Well, I heard there was some kind of feeding job available. The other maintenance guys were talking about it. Said it paid triple overtime." Jake smiled hopefully. I'm trying to save up to bring my sister out from Earth, so if there's extra work, I'm your guy. Valen felt his blood run cold. You want to volunteer for the feeding assignment? Sure, if it's still open. What am I feeding? The commander pulled up the Cell 001 file on his display, turning it toward Jake. Images of SH Kareth filled the screen, massive, terrifying, surrounded by distorted space. Old footage showed it ripping through Imperial cruisers like paper. Jake leaned forward, studying the images. His expression didn't change much. Is that a cat? That, Valen said carefully, is SH Kareth the Devourer. It has killed billions. It destroyed 17 star systems. It has been contained here for 3,821 years, and in all that time, no one has approached its cell. Those who have tried died in ways we cannot fully explain. Jake nodded slowly, still looking at the screen. But it needs food now, right? The containment thing is breaking? Yes. And if nobody feeds it, it breaks out and kills everyone? Correct. Okay. Jake straightened up. What does it eat? Valen stared at the human, searching for signs of bravado, death wishes, or insanity. He found none. The young man just looked willing. Like this was a normal request. You understand you will likely die? Valen asked. I understand it's dangerous, yeah. But someone has to do it, right? Jake shrugged. Might as well be me. The commander felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, hope mixed with crushing guilt. He was going to send this naive kid to his death. But what choice did he have? The kitchen will prepare the nutritional compounds, Valen said quietly. Report there in 1 hour. They'll show you the delivery protocols. Got it, Commander. Thanks for the opportunity. As Jake left, Valen activated every recording system in Section Omega. If the human was going to die, at least his sacrifice would be documented. The Empire needed to know that someone tried. He also sent a message to Jake's supervisor. Prepare death benefits and notify next of kin. The countdown continued. 57 hours until containment failure. But maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't come to that. Valen didn't believe it. But he could hope. Even doomed men could hope. Jake pushed the hovercart down the corridor, and with each step, the facility grew quieter. The normal buzz of activity, aliens talking, machines humming, boots on metal floors, all of it faded away. By the time he reached Section Omega, the only sound was the soft whir of the cart's anti-gravity field and his own breathing. The kitchen staff had been weird about the whole thing. When Jake showed up for the food prep, 3 different aliens had stared at him like he was already a ghost. A Thalaxian chef, this bug-like guy with compound eyes, had actually started crying while loading the cart with these glowing protein cubes. You are very brave, the chef had said, his translator making his voice sound hollow and sad. Just doing my job, Jake had replied, which seemed to make the chef cry harder. Now, walking through Section Omega, Jake was starting to understand why everyone had been so emotional. The walls here were different from the rest of the facility. Thicker. Covered in symbols he couldn't read but somehow understood meant danger. Every 50 feet he passed through another security checkpoint. Massive doors that slid open as he approached, then sealed behind him with sounds like thunder. Warning signs covered every surface. Some showed skulls. Others had symbols that made his eyes hurt to look at. One sign, written in Earth English, was simple and direct. Approach means death. Somebody had a dark sense of humor. The corridor ended at a final door larger than all the others. Above it, numbers glowed in red. 001. Jake took a breath, steadied himself, and stepped forward. The door recognized his clearance badge and opened with a hiss that sounded almost like a scream. The chamber beyond was huge. Easily 100 feet across, with a ceiling that vanished into darkness. Most of the space was empty, but at the far end, behind a barrier that shimmered like heat waves on a desert highway, was the cell. And inside the cell was SH Kareth. Jake had seen big cats before. His aunt had taken him to a zoo once, back in Nevada. He remembered standing in front of the tiger enclosure, amazed at how huge the animal was, how powerful it looked even just lying there in the sun. This was nothing like that. SH Kareth was the size of a commercial truck. Its fur was black but not regular black. This was black like the spaces between stars, like it absorbed light instead of reflecting it. The creature sat in the center of its cell, perfectly still, and Jake could see reality itself bending around it. The space near its body rippled and twisted, making his eyes water when he tried to focus. Then it opened its eyes. 6 of them. Arranged in 2 rows across a face that was almost feline but not quite. Each eye burned with light that seemed to come from somewhere else, somewhere far away and terrible. They fixed on Jake with an intensity that made his knees weak. The creature's mouth opened slightly, revealing teeth that looked like they could bite through starship hulls. A sound came out, a low rumble that Jake felt in his chest, in his bones, in his teeth. The facilities file had called it a purr, but this was a purr the way an earthquake was a vibration. Every instinct Jake had screamed at him to run. His hands shook on the cart's handles. Sweat ran down his back despite the cool air. This thing had destroyed star systems. Killed billions. It was looking at him like he was either food or an annoyance. But Jake had grown up with cats. His family had always had at least 2 or 3 around the house. Strays mostly, cats that showed up and decided to stay. He'd learned young that cats didn't respond well to fear. They could sense it and it made them either aggressive or avoidant. The trick was to stay calm, move slowly and treat them with respect. He had no idea if that would work on an interdimensional horror, but what else was he going to do? Jake crouched down, making himself smaller and less threatening. He kept his movements slow and deliberate, like he was approaching a scared animal instead of a galaxy-destroying monster. The hover cart hummed beside him. "Hey there, buddy," Jake said softly. His voice sounded small in the enormous chamber, but he kept talking anyway. "I know you don't know me, but I brought you some food. Bet you're pretty hungry, huh?" He made clicking sounds with his tongue, the same kind he'd used to call his cats back home. Click, click, click. It felt ridiculous, making cat noises at something that could probably erase him from existence. But Jake had learned to trust his instincts around animals. Karatha's massive head tilted slightly. The movement was almost curious. In the control room 3 levels up, Commander Valen watched the security feeds with a mixture of horror and fascination. Beside him, every technician and scientist who could make an excuse to be there crowded around the monitors. "He's insane," Dr. Morith whispered, her tentacles curled tight with stress. "The human must be insane." "Look at the distortion readings," another scientist said, pointing at a display. "They're fluctuating?" Valen leaned closer. The reality distortions around Karath, which had been chaotic and aggressive for millennia, were indeed changing. Not disappearing but shifting somehow. The pattern looked almost like confusion. On the main screen, Jake had opened a panel in the cell's barrier. A small access port designed for exactly this purpose but never used. He loaded one of the protein cubes onto a sliding tray. "Okay, big guy, here comes some food," Jake said, pushing the tray forward. It slid through the barrier with a soft humming sound. "It's not much to look at, but the kitchen guys seem to think you'd like it." Karath stared at the food. Then at Jake. Then back at the food. For 3,821 years, anything that approached this cell had come with weapons, with hostile intent, with fear that tasted like poison in the air. The creature had learned to expect violence. Had learned that baseline reality was nothing but pain and imprisonment and the endless ache of being torn from home. But this small being, this human, smelled different. Nervous, yes. Afraid, certainly. But also, calm. Friendly. The creature's ancient senses, which could read the fabric of space-time itself, detected no hostility. No weapons. Just food and soft sounds and a strange feeling it took Karath a moment to recognize. Kindness. The massive creature moved forward slowly. Its paws, each one larger than Jake's entire torso, made no sound on the cell floor. The reality distortions moved with it, space folding and unfolding like breathing. Jake held his breath. This was it. Either the thing would eat the food or it would eat him. He really hoped for option 1. Karatha's head lowered to the tray. Its nose, which looked like polished obsidian, touched the protein cube. Sniffed once. Twice. Then it ate. The creature's teeth closed around the food with surprising delicacy. It chewed, swallowed, and made a sound that was almost pleased. A purr that shook dust from the ceiling but lacked the aggressive edge from before. In the control room, every alarm that had been screaming about imminent reality collapse suddenly went quiet. Red lights turned yellow, then green. The containment field readings stabilized for the first time in weeks. What? Dr. Morith couldn't finish the sentence. Down in the cell chamber, Jake slowly stood up. His legs felt like jelly, but he was grinning like an idiot. "Good kitty," he said. "See? That wasn't so bad." Karatha's 6 eyes tracked him as he loaded another protein cube onto the tray. The creature's posture had changed subtly, less tense, more curious. When the second cube arrived, it ate that one too, faster this time. Jake kept talking, kept making those soft clicking sounds, kept treating the reality-warping horror like it was just a very large, very unusual cat. And somehow, impossibly, it worked. By the time the food cart was empty, Karath had moved to the front of its cell, as close to the barrier as it could get. It watched Jake with what might have been interest or confusion, or possibly the beginning of trust. "I'll be back tomorrow, okay?" Jake said, gathering up the empty cart. "Same time. Maybe I'll bring some different food, see what you like." He backed away slowly, keeping eye contact, another cat trick showing he wasn't afraid, and left through the security door. The moment the door sealed behind him, Jake leaned against the wall and let out a long, shaky breath. His hands were trembling. His heart hammered in his chest. But he was alive. And unless he was crazy, that thing had actually seemed happy to see him by the end. In the control room, Commander Valen sat down heavily in his chair. Around him, the scientists erupted into excited chatter, pulling up data, comparing readings, trying to understand what they just witnessed. For the first time in 3,821 years, something had approached Kareth the Devourer and lived. And not just lived, succeeded. 3 weeks passed, and Jake Martinez became the most watched person in the entire galactic empire. Every morning at 0800 hours and every evening at 1800 hours, Jake would load up his hovercart in the kitchen and make the long walk to cell 001. And every single time, scientists, military officers and curious facility workers would crowd into the observation room to watch. It had become the galaxy's strangest routine. Commander Valen had stopped trying to understand it. He just accepted that somehow, impossibly, a 25-year-old maintenance worker from Earth had accomplished what thousands of years of imperial technology and military might couldn't, peaceful contact with Kareth the Devourer. But it was getting weirder. On day 4, Jake had started talking to the creature. Not just the soft reassurances from the first feeding, but actual conversation. He'd pull up a chair outside the barrier and tell Kareth about his day while the creature ate. "So there's this Vraxian guy in maintenance, right? He's got like 8 arms and he still can't figure out how to use the coffee machine. I had to show him 3 times today," Jake would say, and Kareth would sit there, those 6 burning eyes fixed on him, listening. The scientists had instruments measuring everything: brain waves, reality distortions, quantum fluctuations, temporal anomalies. None of it made sense. The creature's hostile readings had dropped by 70%. Its containment stress levels were the lowest ever recorded. It was as if Kareth was relaxing. On day 9, something happened that made Dr. Lisa Porter, the facility's human xenopsychologist, demand access to the observation room. Jake had finished the feeding and was about to leave when he paused at the barrier. "You know," Jake said thoughtfully, "you remind me of my cat back home. Mr. Whiskers. He was this big orange tabby, really fluffy. My sister found him in a parking lot when he was just a kitten." Jake smiled at the memory. "He was kind of a jerk, honestly. Would knock stuff off tables just to watch it fall. But every night, he'd curl up on my bed and purr, and it was the best sound in the world." Kareth tilted its massive head, and for the first time since its capture, the creature moved closer to the barrier voluntarily. Not attacking, not threatening, just moving closer like it wanted to hear better. "I miss him," Jake continued. "Miss a lot of things about Earth, actually. But you probably get that, huh? Being far from home." The creature made a sound, not the reality-shaking purr, but something softer, almost questioning. Jake reached out slowly, carefully, and pressed his hand against the barrier. The shimmer of the containment field made his palm tingle. "I wish I could pet you," Jake said. "I bet you'd like that." What happened next made every alarm in the observation room go off. Kareth pressed its head against the barrier from the other side, right where Jake's hand was. The reality distortions around it intensified, but not in a threatening way. The quantum readings spiked, then settled into a pattern Dr. Porter had only seen in one context: contentment. Jake was petting an interdimensional horror through a quantum barrier, and the horror was enjoying it. "Get him out of there," someone yelled in the observation room. "Wait," Dr. Porter said, her eyes fixed on the readings. "Look at the data. It's not aggressive. It's happy." Commander Valen stared at the screen, watching Jake scratch behind where Kareth's ears would be if it had normal ears. The creature's 6 eyes had half closed, and that softer purr was back, making the camera shake slightly but not causing any damage. "This is impossible," Valen muttered. "Is it though?" Dr. Porter asked. She pulled up her tablet, fingers flying across the screen. "I've been studying Earth's history with felines. Humans domesticated cats nearly 10,000 years ago. They've lived alongside these predators, understanding them, caring for them, for longer than some species have had space travel." "Kareth is not a cat," Valen said flatly. "No, but it's close enough that human instincts apparently work on it." Dr. Porter gestured at the screen where Jake was now talking about proper scratching techniques. Look at his body language. He's not treating it like a monster or a prisoner. He's treating it like a living thing that deserves respect and kindness. By week 2, Jake had started bringing things besides food. A small portable speaker that played music. Some pictures from Earth that he'd stick to the wall outside the barrier. Little things to make the space less empty and cold. Thought you might like some variety, Jake said, setting up the speaker. Soft instrumental music filled the chamber. Nothing too loud, just gentle background noise. Gets pretty quiet down here, I bet? Karatha's reaction was immediate. The creature's posture shifted, became less guarded. It moved around its cell, following the sound, seeming almost curious about this new stimulus. The scientists documented everything obsessively. They analyzed Jake's tone of voice, his movements, his word choices. They tried to create protocols, to turn his natural behavior into something reproducible. It didn't work. When other people tried Jake's techniques, Karath would retreat to the back of its cell, reality distortions flaring with anxiety. It only responded to Jake. On day 18, Commander Valen called Jake to his office. The young man arrived still wearing his maintenance uniform, looking confused. Am I in trouble, sir? Jake asked. No. The opposite, actually. Valen gestured for him to sit. The Emperor himself has taken notice of what you're doing. They want to understand how you've achieved this connection with the entity. Jake shrugged uncomfortably. I'm not really doing anything special, Commander. I just feed it and talk to it. Treat it nice. For 3,000 years, that creature has been nothing but hostile. It has killed millions, destroyed worlds. And you treat it nice, and suddenly it's docile? Well, yeah. Jake leaned forward. Sir, have you ever had a pet? Like a dog or a cat or anything? Valen's 4 hands folded across his chest. No. Okay, so, animals respond to how you treat them. If you're scared or angry or mean, they know. They feel it. And they react to it. Jake's voice grew more confident as he explained. When I go down to cell 001, I'm not thinking about what Karath did 3,000 years ago. I'm just thinking about right now. About this big lonely creature that's stuck in a cell far from home. And yeah, it's dangerous, but so was Mr. Whiskers when he got startled. You just gotta be patient and kind. Valen stared at the human, trying to process this explanation. The greatest minds in the Empire had been studying Karath for millennia, developing complex theories about its psychology and behavior. And this maintenance worker's explanation was, just be nice to it? The Emperor wants you to continue your work, Valen said finally. You're officially reassigned. Your only duty is caring for the entity in cell 001. Significant pay increase, special clearance, whatever you need. Jake's eyes widened. Really? That's, wow. Okay. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. They also want you to start teaching others your methods. I can try, but honestly, I don't think it's something you can really teach. It's more of a feeling thing, you know? Valen didn't know, but he nodded anyway. That evening, Jake arrived for the usual feeding to find Dr. Porter waiting outside the chamber. Mind if I observe more closely? She asked. I promise I'll stay quiet. Sure, Doc. Come on. They entered together, and Dr. Porter watched as Jake went through his routine. The greeting, soft voice, slow movements. The feeding, talking casually while Karath ate. The after-feeding time when Jake would just sit and chat about random things. Today Jake was talking about his sister. Katie's trying to save up for the transport here. She wants to see space, you know? Our whole lives we were stuck in this tiny town in Nevada. Now I'm working on a space station, feeding an interdimensional being. Life's weird. Karath made that questioning sound again, and Jake laughed. Yeah, you probably think I'm weird too. Fair enough. Dr. Porter noticed something the cameras hadn't fully captured. The way Karatha's entire body language had changed over the weeks. The creature no longer held itself rigid with defensive tension. It moved fluidly, almost playfully. When Jake reached toward the barrier to do the petting through the field thing, Karath practically bounded over. You've built trust, Dr. Porter said softly. Real, genuine trust with something we thought was incapable of it. Jake smiled, scratching the creature's head through the shimmer. Everyone's capable of trust, Doc. You just gotta give them a reason to trust you back. In that moment, Dr. Porter understood. The Empire had kept Karath prisoner, treated it as a threat, approached it with fear and weapons for thousands of years. Jake was the first being to approach with open hands and an open heart. The pattern had finally broken. Not through superior firepower or advanced containment. Through simple human kindness. Dr. Lisa Porter couldn't sleep. For 3 nights straight, she'd been lying in her quarters staring at the ceiling, thinking about what she'd witnessed in cell 001. The way S.H. Kareth responded to Jake wasn't just unusual, it was revolutionary. And it raised a question that kept echoing in her mind. What if they'd been wrong about everything? On the 4th morning, she went straight to Commander Vallen's office before he'd even finished his morning briefing. She looked exhausted, her hair messy, still wearing yesterday's clothes. But her eyes were bright with the kind of manic energy that came from a breakthrough. "I need to interview Jake," she said without preamble. "Officially. Recorded. Everything." Vallen looked up from his reports. "We've already documented his methods extensively." "No, you don't understand. I need to know why he does what he does. Not the actions, the thinking behind them. Because I think we've been approaching S.H. Kareth completely wrong for nearly 4,000 years, and if I'm right, the implications are—" She trailed off, running a hand through her hair. "Just let me talk to him. Please." 2 hours later, Jake sat in interview room 7, looking slightly nervous. The camera recorded everything. Dr. Porter sat across from him with a tablet full of questions, but she started with the simplest one. "Jake, when you first saw S.H. Kareth, what did you think?" Jake thought for a moment. "Honestly? I thought it looked scared." "Scared?" "The file describes it as one of the most dangerous entities ever encountered." "Yeah, but that doesn't mean it can't be scared, right?" Jake leaned forward. "Doc, I grew up with cats. Like a lot of cats. And the thing about cats is, when they're scared or stressed, they get aggressive. They hiss, they scratch, they attack. It's not because they're evil or want to hurt you. It's because they're protecting themselves." Dr. Porter made notes rapidly. "Go on." "So when I saw S.H. Kareth in that cell, yeah, it looked dangerous. But it also looked trapped. Alone. Those reality distortion things everyone talks about? They looked like stress to me. Like when a cat first stands up because it's freaked out." Jake shrugged. "I just figured maybe if someone was nice to it, it would calm down." "And you weren't afraid it would kill you?" "I was terrified," Jake admitted with a laugh. "But someone had to try, right? And I kept thinking, if I was ripped away from my home and locked in a cell for thousands of years, I'd probably be pretty angry too. That doesn't make me a monster. It makes me traumatized." Dr. Porter stopped writing and looked up at him. Really looked at him. This maintenance worker from Earth, barely out of his teens, had instinctively understood something the galaxy's greatest minds had missed. "Jake, what do you think S.H. Kareth wants?" "Same thing everything wants, I guess. To feel safe. To not be alone. Maybe to go home." Jake's expression grew sad. "I don't think it ever wanted to hurt anyone. I think it was just trying to get back to where it belonged, and everyone kept attacking it, so it defended itself." Dr. Porter felt chills run down her spine. "Say that again." "Which part?" "The part about going home." Jake repeated it, confused why it mattered so much. Dr. Porter stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I need to access the original capture reports. Right now." She practically ran from the room, leaving Jake sitting there wondering what he'd said. Within an hour, she'd pulled every file related to S.H. Kareth's capture from the Imperial archives. The reports were old, written in dialects that required translation software to understand properly. Most analysts had focused on the tactical details: troop movements, weapon deployments, containment strategies. Dr. Porter focused on something else entirely: the initial contact reports. The exploration fleet had entered the void between on a mapping mission. They detected unusual energy signatures and gone to investigate. When they arrived, they'd found S.H. Kareth, but according to the original reports, the creature hadn't attacked first. The fleet had fired warning shots. Standard procedure when encountering unknown entities. Shots across the bow to establish dominance, to show strength. The report said S.H. Kareth had reacted with extreme hostility to these warning shots. But what if it hadn't been hostility? What if it had been fear? Dr. Porter dug deeper, finding survey data from that region of the void between. There were structures there, or what the sensors had interpreted as structures. Formations of exotic matter arranged in patterns that suggested deliberate construction. The survey team had noted them but hadn't investigated further because S.H. Kareth had attacked. She pulled up dimensional analysis data, her hands shaking as the pieces came together. The void between wasn't empty space. It was a dimension where certain types of entities lived naturally. S.H. Kareth's home dimension. The Empire hadn't encountered a monster in the void. They'd encountered a resident. And when that resident reacted to armed vessels appearing in its territory and firing weapons, the Empire had labeled it an aggressor. "Oh no," Dr. Porter whispered to the empty archive room. "Oh no no no." She ran to Commander Valen's office, bursting through the door without knocking. He looked up, startled as she dropped her tablet on his desk. "Read this," she demanded. "All of it." Valen spent 20 minutes going through her research, his expression growing darker with each page. When he finished, he set the tablet down carefully like it might explode. "Are you suggesting," he said slowly, "that SH Kareth was defending its home?" "Not suggesting. Stating. We invaded its dimension, fired on it, and when it tried to escape back through the dimensional rifts we'd created, we chased it. We hunted it across 17 star systems. And when we finally caught it, we locked it in a cell and called it a victory." The silence in the office was deafening. "For 3,821 years, Dr. Porter continued, her voice shaking, we've been imprisoning an innocent being. We ripped it away from its home, possibly its family, definitely its native reality, and we've kept it trapped here. And we wonder why it was hostile." Valen's 4 hands clenched into fists. "This can't be right. The Empire wouldn't. The Empire made a mistake. A huge, terrible mistake. And we've been too proud or too scared to question it." Dr. Porter pulled up another file. "I went back through every incident report. Every time SH Kareth attacked something, it was trying to create a dimensional rift large enough to escape through. It wasn't destroying star systems because it wanted to. It was trying to tear a hole big enough to go home." Commander Valen stood and walked to his window, staring out at the facility's corridors. Outside, life went on as normal. People working, eating, sleeping. None of them knowing that their greatest security achievement was actually their greatest shame. "Why didn't anyone see this before?" he asked quietly. "Because no one looked. Everyone was so focused on the threat, on the danger, on the destruction that nobody stopped to ask why. Nobody wondered if maybe this creature had a reason for its actions." Dr. Porter joined him at the window. "Nobody until Jake. And you know why he saw it? Because he didn't look at SH Kareth and see a monster. He looked and saw a scared, lonely animal far from home." Valen turned to face her. "If this gets out, if the Emperor learns that we've been torturing an innocent being for millennia? The Emperor needs to know. Everyone needs to know." Dr. Porter's voice was firm. "But more than that, we need to make it right. We need to find a way to communicate with SH Kareth, to understand what it wants, what it needs. And if possible," she took a breath, "we need to find a way to send it home." That evening, Jake arrived for the regular feeding to find Commander Valen and Dr. Porter waiting for him. The commander looked older somehow, tired in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. "Jake," Valen said, "we need to tell you something about SH Kareth. About what really happened when it was captured." They explained everything. The exploration fleet, the warning shots, the chase across star systems, the mistaken assumption that SH Kareth was an aggressor. Jake listened quietly, his expression growing sadder with each detail. When they finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "So we kidnapped it. That's what happened. We took it from its home and locked it up, and then we acted surprised when it wasn't friendly." "Yes," Valen said simply. Jake looked toward the door that led to cell 001. "Does it know?" "That we understand now. We don't have a way to communicate complex ideas yet," Dr. Porter said. "But Jake, your relationship with it, that might be our best hope. You've built trust. Real trust. If anyone can help us make this right, it's you." Jake nodded slowly. "Then I guess we should get started. Because that creature in there? It's been waiting almost 4,000 years for someone to care. For someone to listen. And I'm not going to make it wait any longer." For the first time since the truth had emerged, Commander Valen felt something like hope. The humans had been part of the Empire for less than a decade, and already they were changing everything. Not with weapons or technology. With empathy. With kindness. With the simple revolutionary act of giving a damn. The Emperor's response came faster than anyone expected. Commander Valen had sent his report at 0900 hours, expecting weeks of deliberation, committees, bureaucratic delays. Instead, within 6 hours, a high-priority message arrived with the Imperial seal glowing gold across the screen. "Proceed with communication attempts. All resources approved. Failure is not acceptable." That last line made Valen's stomach drop. The Empire didn't tolerate failure well, especially not on matters this significant. They'd accidentally imprisoned an innocent being for nearly 4,000 years. If they couldn't make it right, heads would roll. Probably literally. But there was a bigger problem. How do you apologize to something that doesn't speak your language? How do you communicate with a being from another dimension when your entire understanding of reality is different from its own? The answer, as it turned out, was sitting in the facility cafeteria eating synthetic eggs and toast. Dr. Porter found Jake there the next morning, looking tired but determined. She slid into the seat across from him, carrying a tablet thick with research data. "We need your help," she said without preamble. "The Emperor wants us to establish real communication with Sh. Kareth. Not just feeding and petting but actual dialogue. Understanding what it wants, what it needs, if it's even possible to send it home." Jake swallowed his bite of toast. "Okay. How do we do that?" "That's the problem. We don't know." Dr. Porter pulled up holographic displays showing brain scans, quantum readings, dimensional analysis. Sh. Kareth's consciousness operates on frequencies we barely understand. Its thoughts exist partially in our reality and partially in the void between. Traditional translation technology doesn't work because it's not speaking. It's existing in patterns we can't fully perceive. Jake studied the displays, though most of it looked like colorful nonsense to him. "But it understands me when I talk, right? I mean, it responds. It reacts." "Yes, but we don't know how much it actually comprehends versus just responding to your emotional tone and body language. So we need to go deeper." Jake set down his fork, thinking. "When I talk to Sh. Kareth, I feel like it gets me. Not the words maybe, but the meaning behind them. The feeling. What if we worked with that instead of trying to make it speak our language?" Dr. Porter's eyes lit up. Emotional communication. Using empathy as a bridge instead of linguistics. Exactly. Animals back on Earth, they don't understand English, but they understand intent. Love, fear, anger, sadness. Those are universal, right? Maybe even across dimensions. Within hours, Dr. Porter had assembled a team. Not just scientists but artists, musicians, psychologists. If they were going to communicate through emotion and intent, they needed people who understood those things deeply. And at the center of it all was Jake, the maintenance worker who'd accidentally become humanity's first interdimensional diplomat. They started small. Jake would go to cell 001 as usual, but now he carried devices that measured Sh. Kareth's responses in ways the regular sensors couldn't. Emotional resonance detectors, quantum empathy readers, devices with names Jake couldn't pronounce but that supposedly tracked feeling across dimensional boundaries. "Okay, buddy," Jake said during the first session, sitting cross-legged outside the barrier while Sh. Kareth watched him with those 6 burning eyes. "We're going to try something new today. I'm going to think about things, feel things, and we're going to see if you feel them too." He started with simple emotions. Happiness. He thought about the day his sister Katie had surprised him with a homemade birthday cake, how warm and loved he'd felt. The sensors lit up, showing Sh. Kareth's quantum signature shifting toward patterns the scientists labeled as positive engagement. Sadness. He remembered leaving Earth, saying goodbye to his family, not knowing when he'd see them again. The creature's massive form shifted, moving closer to the barrier, and the sensors showed what Dr. Porter called empathetic resonance. It was working. Sh. Kareth wasn't just sensing Jake's emotions. It was feeling them, sharing them somehow. Over the next 2 weeks they refined the technique. Jake would project emotions while the team recorded Sh. Kareth's responses, building a database of emotional communication. Gradually patterns emerged. Certain feelings triggered specific reactions. The creature had its own emotional landscape, its own way of expressing itself through quantum fluctuations and reality distortions. And then came the breakthrough. Jake was in cell 001 talking about home, really talking, pouring his heart out about Earth, about Nevada, about the desert sky at night and the way it felt to be somewhere you belonged. The longing in his voice was real. He missed home desperately, even though he'd never admit it to anyone else. Sh. Kareth moved right up to the barrier, so close that Jake could feel the heat radiating from its massive body. The creature's eyes locked onto his, and suddenly Jake felt something. Not his own emotion but something else. Something foreign and vast and achingly sad flowing into his mind. Images flashed through his consciousness. Not images exactly but impressions. A place between places, where space folded like origami and time moved in spirals. Warmth and safety and belonging. Others like Sh. Kareth, moving through dimensions like humans walk through rooms. Family. Home. Peace. And then the feeling of it being ripped away. Terror. Confusion. Pain. The endless ache of isolation, of being trapped in a reality that felt wrong on every level, like wearing clothes made of knives. Jake gasped, tears streaming down his face. "I understand," he whispered. "I understand now." In the observation room, every sensor had gone haywire. Dr. Porter stared at the readings in awe. "It's sharing its memories." His feelings? SH Kareth is communicating. Commander Valen stood beside her, watching Jake and the creature pressed close to opposite sides of the barrier, connected by something the instruments could barely measure but was undeniably real. What is it showing him? Valen asked. Everything. Where it came from. What happened. What it wants. Dr. Porter's voice shook. It wants to go home. Over the following weeks, the communication deepened. A human linguist named Rachel Torres joined the team, working with Jake to develop a shared language based on emotional concepts rather than words. Colors for feelings. Sounds for ideas. Movement for intention. Slowly, painfully, they built a bridge between a human maintenance worker and an interdimensional being. And through that bridge, SH Kareth told its story. It had been young by its species standards when the Imperial fleet arrived. Curious. It had approached the strange vessels, wanting to understand what they were. The warning shots had terrified it. It fled, tearing rifts through space-time in panic. The fleet had interpreted this as an attack and pursued. 4 years, SH Kareth had run, desperately trying to create a portal large enough to escape back to the void between. Every attempt had required enormous energy, which meant tearing through star systems, absorbing matter and energy to fuel the dimensional rifts. It hadn't wanted to destroy those worlds. It had been trying to survive. When Jake shared this with the team, the weight of it settled over everyone like a physical thing. Billions had died, yes, but not because of malice. Because of fear and misunderstanding on both sides. Can we send it home? Jake asked Dr. Porter one evening, both of them exhausted from another long session. We're working on it. The technology the Empire used to capture SH Kareth, we think we can reverse it. Create a stable portal to the void between. She rubbed her tired eyes. But Jake, even if we succeed, even if we can open the door, what if its home is gone? What if its family didn't survive 4,000 years? We might be sending it back to nothing. Then we let it decide, Jake said firmly. We give it the choice. Stay here where people finally understand it or go home and face whatever's there. But it should be SH Kareth's choice, not ours. The Emperor himself arrived 3 months later, his vessel accompanied by a fleet that made Kronos 9 look tiny by comparison. The most powerful being in the galaxy wanted to see the impossible communication for himself. Jake had never been more nervous in his life. He stood in cell 001, Emperor Vexthor watching from the observation room and tried to stay calm. SH Kareth sensed his anxiety and made that soft, questioning sound it had developed. It's okay, buddy, Jake said quietly. Just some important people watching today. No big deal. He went through the communication routine they developed. Colors and sounds and feelings, all flowing between human and entity, building meaning from emotion. Jake explained that they wanted to help, that they understood now, that they were sorry. SH Kareth's response came as waves of quantum data that the translation system interpreted as something close to forgiveness mixed with wary hope. Then Jake asked the big question. Did SH Kareth want to go home? The creature's response was immediate and overwhelming. Yes. More than anything. Always yes. In the observation room, Emperor Vexthor turned to his chief scientists. Make it happen. Whatever it takes. We owe this being a debt that can never truly be repaid, but we will start by returning what we stole. Its freedom. 6 more months of work followed. The galaxy's best minds collaborated on dimensional portal technology, refining it, testing it, making absolutely certain it would work. They couldn't risk trapping SH Kareth halfway between realities or sending it to the wrong dimension. Finally the day came. Cell 001 had been converted into a massive dimensional gateway. Energy hummed through the facility, making the walls vibrate. Every precaution had been taken, every calculation checked and rechecked. Jake stood in the chamber one last time, facing SH Kareth through the barrier that would soon drop. The creature looked at him with those 6 burning eyes, and Jake felt its gratitude wash over him like sunlight. You're going home, Jake said, smiling even as tears ran down his face. You get to go home, buddy. The portal began to open, a tear in reality that showed glimpses of the void between, that impossible space where SH Kareth belonged. The creature's entire body shifted, reality distortions flaring with excitement and joy. But before it stepped through, SH Kareth did something unprecedented. It pressed its massive head against the barrier one last time, right where Jake's hand rested. In that moment, Jake felt everything the creature wanted to say. Thank you. Goodbye, friend. I'll miss you too, Jake whispered. Then SH Kareth turned and leaped through the portal, its form dissolving into patterns of light and shadow as it crossed between dimensions. For just a moment, Jake could have sworn he saw others on the other side, more creatures like Kareth, moving forward to greet the one who'd finally come home. The portal closed with a sound like thunder and silence combined. Cell 001 stood empty for the first time in 3,821 years. In the observation room, Emperor Vexthor stood with his hands clasped behind his back. "The human," he said to Commander Valen. "Jake Martinez. He is to be promoted to Chief Xenological Relations Officer. And I want a full training program developed based on his methods. The galaxy has species beyond count, and if this incident has taught us anything, it's that we understand almost none of them." Commander Valen nodded. "And the humans, Your Majesty? What role will they play?" The Emperor watched as Jake wiped his eyes, staring at the empty cell with a bittersweet smile. "The humans will teach us something we forgot in our millennia of expansion and conquest. They will teach us empathy. They will remind us that power without compassion makes monsters of us all." He turned from the window. "Humanity has been part of our empire for less than a decade, and already they've accomplished what we could not in 4,000 years. They've shown us that the universe is not something to be conquered or controlled. It is something to be understood, to be approached with open hands and open hearts. And if other species resist this approach, Your Majesty?" Emperor Vexthor smiled, a rare expression on his ancient face. "Then we send them a human. Apparently that's all it takes." 3 weeks later, Jake received a message from deep space. The translation was rough, filtered through equipment that barely understood dimensional languages, but the meaning was clear. Kareth was home. Reunited with family. Safe. And grateful. Jake sat in his new office, much bigger than a maintenance worker's quarters, and looked at the message for a long time. Then he opened his communication channel and started typing a report for the Emperor. "Recommendation for first contact protocols with unknown species. Try being nice to them first. See what happens. You'd be surprised how far a little kindness can go." He paused, then added, "Even across dimensions. Even when it seems impossible. Especially then." Humanity's first major contribution to the Galactic Empire wasn't military strength or advanced technology. It was the simple, revolutionary idea that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose compassion over fear. That sometimes the most powerful weapon in the universe is the willingness to see someone else's pain and say, "I understand. And I want to help." Jake Martinez, former maintenance worker, now chief diplomat, sat back in his chair and smiled. Mr. Whiskers would have been proud. And somewhere in the space between spaces, in the void between where reality folded like origami and time moved in spirals, an interdimensional being purred contentedly. Finally home. Finally free. Finally understood.